Hello and welcome to a new Ukraine war update. I know it's been a while, but today's update is once again packed with intense footage, so I'll keep this short. If you appreciate the effort I put into this video, please show your support with a like and a comment. I'll also reveal what I look like, so you'll finally have a face to the voice, but more on that later. The full 50-minute, uncensored version of this update can be found on my Telegram. The link is in the description, and now, let's go. Here, a Ukrainian soldier knocks an incoming FPV drone out of the air by striking it with his rifle, and it actually works. There has already been plenty of crazy FPV footage in this video, but this one really takes the crown, but trust me, there's more to come today. This Russian fiber optic guided FPV drone is about to strike a Ukrainian vehicle but miraculously ricochets off the roof, giving the Ukrainians just enough time to stop and abandon the car before the drone turns around and finally strikes it for good. Attentive viewers may even spotted the visible fiber optic cable for a brief moment during the maneuver. I like showing moments where soldiers get lucky, and well, this right here was really big luck. A Russian FPV drone directly hit a Ukrainian soldier but failed to explode, allowing him and his comrades to get away. I think we've all seen the Chewbacca Hedgehog tanks that Russia has been sending into combat lately, but take a look at this. Now we apparently also have literal container tanks. I mean, seriously, what the hell is this thing? It could also be an attempt to fool AI recognition systems, or what do you think? Drones have truly become the archenemy of what were once proud machines. This Russian soldier narrowly avoided an FPV drone and decided to jump into a well to evade further strikes. The Ukrainians then attempted to hit him again. A thermite drone would have been particularly nasty in this situation. Quite impressive footage shows the port of Odessa during a Russian drone attack. We can see a large amount of ground-to-air fire, indicated by the high number of tracers. As a rule of thumb, there are usually 3 to 5 standard, non-visible rounds for every tracer, which gives us a sense of the sheer volume of outgoing fire. The engagement continued for several more minutes with the same intensity, so I cut it to the point where a surface-to-air missile becomes involved to intercept the Russian aerial threat. I'll return to the strategic air war over Ukraine later, but first, an answer to the question of why there haven't been any videos for so long. The answer is that I fell ill twice, and in between I attended the Dubai Air Show, where I was invited by Edge to take a look at their latest drone technologies. And yes, that's me, and as you can see, I'm a pretty serious guy in private. I think you'll be seeing my ugly face more often from now on, since this site is getting so flooded with AI slop that I just want you to get to know me better. Thanks to Edge, I was able to take a look at a whole new arsenal of drones and precision-guided munitions. At this show alone, they unveiled 42 systems, all of which are designed to meet the new demands of the modern battlefield. That means they are actively developing solutions to problems we constantly see here in my assessments. But you will see for yourself. Now, back to some intense footage of special forces in action. A Ukrainian FPV drone slams into a large metal shed in the middle of an industrial area somewhere near Pokrovsk. From the flames, a lone Russian soldier emerges, visibly dazed by the strike, and with his weapon still in his hands, he takes a few steps to hide himself a bit further in the grass. But he is given no chance to catch his breath because Ukrainian Special Forces already closed in on his position and opened fire on the area with assault rifles and light machine guns. It appears, however, that the men received intel from a drone indicating that the Russian had changed position, and the operators relocated behind a concrete wall. From there, they continued engaging the Russian. Even though he is not visible on camera, he must have been nearby, as the men not only used their rifles to target him, but also employed grenades, indicating he was within throwing range. The operators later reported that, according to the feed from an observer drone, 2 to 3 grenades landed directly on him. However, even with the aftermath footage, which I can only share on Telegram, it is hard to confirm this, so we have to take their word for it. Afterwards, the men took shelter in a larger industrial building. These buildings provide protection against larger calibers such as artillery and airstrikes, and while it is in principle possible to navigate FPV drones through them to hunt individual soldiers, they ultimately still have to be cleared by boots on the ground. Due to their size and the associated concealment opportunities, as well as the current reality of the high-intensity battlefield, they act as magnets for infantry, often making them fiercely contested areas of interest for both parties to the conflict. That is why it comes as no surprise that the same Special Forces group had already been deployed a day earlier to clear another industrial building of Russian infiltrators. They encountered a four-man team of Russian soldiers who, according to the Ukrainian Special Forces, were very well equipped. At least one of them was armed with an AK-12 assault rifle and all were wearing ghillie suits, indicating that this time the Ukrainians were facing an equal opponent. However, advantageous for the Ukrainians was the fact that they caught the Russians by surprise, and the first half of the skirmish left two of the Russian soldiers KIA. The now following short dialogue between the Ukrainian troops makes it clear just how unprepared the Russians were for the contact. Since the Ukrainians had already spent a considerable amount of time on target, the risk of being targeted by Russian FPV drones increased with every passing second, and so the men decided to withdraw to a rearward rally point to regroup and reassess the situation. A drone was tasked to conduct a battle damage assessment, confirming two Russian personnel KIA. Since the Ukrainians assessed that at least 1 to 2 additional Russian soldiers were still in the vicinity, they returned to complete their mission and indeed spotted one more Russian. At least that is what the translation suggests, but judging from the footage, it is also possible that they engaged an idle FPV drone lying in ambush mode. Let me know in the comments what you think is more likely here. Also, what do you think about this here right now? I mean, this approach of using preventive fire to engage potential enemy positions or adversaries behind light concealment or soft cover does make sense. However, in the previous case, I believe he was trying to fire through gaps in the concrete, as I do not think he assumed that the caliber of his rifle could penetrate the wall. In this case, however, this kind of proactive, preventive fire makes perfect sense, since the rounds can easily penetrate the containers and harass, disrupt, suppress, or even hit any potential enemy hiding inside. Ideally, this should be combined with grenades, but as we can see, there are many containers here, and carrying large numbers of grenades is harder than one might think, as they add weight and can slow you down quite a lot if you carry too many. It is also interesting that, despite the constant drone threat, these men advance in pairs, maintaining tight cohesion as they slowly move through this container alley while clearing it with fire. They are likely assuming a window of opportunity during which they can operate relatively undisturbed in the open before having to fear the arrival of enemy FPV drones. I would estimate this window at around 5 to 10 minutes, but I would not recommend taking that figure as definitive, as it can vary greatly depending on circumstances and priority levels. Factors include how far the FPV drones are being launched from, whether an observer drone is already on station, or whether an FPV is already loitering over the objective. Things like weather also play a role and so on. But you have to work with some assumptions, I suppose. As Russia currently relies primarily on long-range fires at the operational and strategic levels, while at the tactical level it mostly deploys small infiltration groups, Special Operations Forces are particularly well suited to conduct clearing and interdiction operations in the space between regular formations. On the one hand, they are typically capable of coordinating airstrikes and other precision fires, enabling them to rapidly coordinate the neutralization of Russian positions when required. On the other hand, they are trained in hunter-killer operations, operations behind enemy lines, and combat in friendly and enemy rear areas. Another factor is that they can operate largely independently and, due to their own expertise in infiltration operations, possess a solid understanding of their enemy. I think you know by now that I like generic Sun Tzu quotes, and there is a fitting quote here that goes, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you do not need to fear the result of 100 battles." Do you know how it continues? Write it in the comments. At the strategic level, Russia continues to employ large numbers of Shahed drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles, which are now also being used in coordinated swarm-like attacks. Here, Ukraine employs surface-to-air missiles and, in particular, Western-supplied fighter jets such as the French Mirage 2000 to hunt down and intercept these missiles and drones. According to Ukrainian pilots, the Mirage has achieved remarkably impressive interception rates against Russian weapons. In fact, so high that one pilot even claimed a 98% shoot-down rate during Russian attacks. According to the Ukrainians, this performance is largely attributed to the infrared-guided Magic 2 air-to-air missile. But the F-16 also plays a major role in this effort, and piece by piece, more and more videos are being released showing it in air combat against drones and Russian cruise missiles. This is particularly interesting because for a long time almost everything involving the F-16 was kept under OPSEC for security reasons, and we saw virtually nothing of it on the battlefield. Now, as you can see, we even have cockpit and HUD footage from several interception missions. According to Ukrainian sources, the F-16 has proven itself effective for precision ground strikes such as with JDAMs and for countering drones. However, they also face significant challenges from Russian electronic warfare and air defense systems, which have reportedly led to the loss of at least 3 F-16 jets during drone interception missions. During these missions, they often get extremely close to the drones and shoot them down using air-to-air missiles or even their onboard cannon. I would argue that this is definitely cheaper than relying on missiles all the time. Ukraine also employs simpler propeller-driven aircraft to hunt Russian drones. While they generally shoot them down, there have also been instances of pilots ramming drones to force them to crash. Unfortunately, the pilot you saw earlier lost his life in combat. Russia also uses propeller aircraft for drone interception in the rear areas, and here Ukrainian forces destroy one of these planes with a precise drone strike on an airfield. For propaganda, economic, and combat value reasons, aircraft are always considered high-value targets, and as a rule, the closer they operate to the front line, the more dangerous it becomes for them. This is primarily due to long and medium-range surface-to-air missile systems, but also because of man-portable air defense systems, especially when aircraft fly at low altitude to evade larger SAM systems or to conduct close air support for friendly ground troops. The use of manpads has already led to countless spectacular images, showing in particular Russian jets being shot down during combat missions and crashing to the ground. Of course, manpads do not have a 100% hit rate, and shots often miss, as can be seen in this archival clip of an attempt to shoot down a Russian combat helicopter. Nevertheless, operating within their range and engagement envelope often means exposing oneself to a very real and significant risk of being shot down. To address this problem, the development of autonomous unmanned aerial combat vehicles is already being pushed forward by a number of states. One such UCAV is the Janaya, which in Arabic roughly translates to ghost. It was developed by Edge, but beyond a few basic specifications such as its stealth characteristics and its ability to engage both ground and air targets, most information about it is currently being kept classified. During the Dubai Air Show, however, some of the systems it can be equipped with were presented, one of which is the Darkwing, which resembles a small, stocky cruise missile. Here, however, also not much about it was disclosed, and while it looks like a cruise missile, it was showcased under the term Modular, Air or Ground-Launched Autonomous Strike System. According to available information, it is engineered with interchangeable seekers and payloads to adapt to different mission requirements. The system allows its seekers to be swapped, presumably enabling engagement of various target types. Besides its autonomy features, it also uses visual navigation, has a range of 200 kilometers, and can carry modular payloads of 25, 50, or 100 kilogram. One of the main reasons why the area around Pokrovsk currently ranks among the most dangerous sections of the entire front is the massive use of Russian glide bombs. While they are also used extensively in other parts of the front, the Russian focus of effort in this sector makes their employment here even more intense. With them, it is possible to destroy fortified Ukrainian positions, trenches, and buildings relatively quickly, precisely, and cost-effectively, thereby paving the way for Russian ground forces. The strong focus of Russian forces on conducting combat primarily in this manner is interesting in a certain way, especially when one considers that during the US deployment in Afghanistan it was routine for Russian troll accounts to defame American combat footage in YouTube comment sections. They frequently accused US forces of being incapable of winning engagements against the Taliban without air support and precision JDAM strikes. Today, however, we are witnessing a very similar reliance on standoff, air-delivered munitions by Russia. I would even go so far as to argue that these weapons have become one of Russia's primary enablers on the battlefield, second only to the current American administration, corruption within Ukraine, and an overall lack of coherent leadership among divided European governments. Already during the failed Ukrainian summer offensive and the heavy urban fighting in Bakhmut, I repeatedly pointed out in my videos the need for enablers capable of quickly and precisely destroying positions such as trenches or reinforced concrete buildings, so troops would not have to laboriously clearing them one by one. It almost seems as if the Russians were listening back then and took notes. As you can see, with this approach, it is possible to eliminate entire wings of a building, or even whole structures altogether. The fact that these fabs are essentially inexpensive, unguided bombs converted into precision munitions, makes them extremely easy to produce and highly scalable. While Ukraine does possess similar weapon systems, they do not come anywhere near Russian production volumes or stockpile sizes. This disparity in numbers translates directly into battlefield effects, allowing Russia to apply sustained pressure against fortified positions in a way Ukraine currently struggles to match.
Да? Куда полетів? Зараз в'їбе. Охуєть.
Here, a Russian drone captured the exact moment a Fab glide bomb streaked past it just before slamming into a Ukrainian position. Just a few years ago, this would have been a million-view shot just like most of the clips I have shown here. It serves as a good illustration of how saturated the front has become with these kinds of strikes. At the Dubai Air Show, I had the opportunity to inspect some of the Russian bombs currently used in Ukraine, and I have to say that is about as close as I ever want to get to one. The concept of converting unguided dumb bombs into precision munitions through glide kits or other guidance packages is not entirely new, however. For example, the UAE's Edge Group had already showcased a similar concept with its Thunder series some years ago, and these systems were once again presented as part of their arsenal. The Thunder family is a range of cost-effective, short-range guidance kits that can be fitted to various types of Mk general-purpose aerial munitions, converting them into precision-guided weapons. Edge showed off a huge lineup of drones and precision-guided munitions, and I figured it couldn't hurt to make friends with a few of them just in case Skynet goes live a bit earlier than planned. This also included Andural's new Omen drone, which I admittedly admired and therefore had to touch. The system is the result of a collaboration between Andural and Edge Group. So far, no extensive information is publicly available about the system, aside from the fact that several prototypes have already been tested and that it is a Group 3 tail-sitter. This means it combines vertical takeoff and landing, VTOL, with efficient forward flight. The aircraft stands on its tail for launch and recovery, then tilts 90 degrees into horizontal flight. As a result, it is runway independent, allows for rapid setup and launch, and combines the endurance and payload capacity of larger platforms with the affordability and agility of smaller systems. Furthermore, it is powered by Andural's Lattice for mission autonomy software, and features a modular, open architecture, enabling operators to reconfigure and scale its capabilities to meet specific mission demands. One of these demands is ISR, and with that we return to the battlefield around Pokrovsk. There, the constant drone surveillance of the battlespace has pushed Russian forces to exploit poor weather conditions such as dense fog to move troops into the city following heavy bombardments. Here we can see such an infiltration by Russian soldiers on foot, in cars, and on motorcycles. If you ask me, the overall composition of the scene gives it a bit of Mad Max vibes. This footage illustrates quite well that only the presence of fog allows larger, motorized formations to maneuver through the terrain and especially along supply and connecting roads with any degree of relative safety. The fog conceals vehicle movement that would otherwise be easily detected by drones and, particularly on roads that channel movement, quickly targeted and destroyed. The Russian fog tactics forced the Ukrainians to revert to more traditional forms of ground-based reconnaissance and small unit tactics to counter these infiltrators. However, as can be clearly seen in this helmet camera footage, this approach comes with its own challenges because visibility on the ground is extremely limited, which significantly complicates finding, fixing, and finishing enemy forces. As a result, engagements often emerge in a highly unpredictable manner and are fought at very short distances due to the restricted field of view. Here, the rule of thumb is that the more of the enemy you can bring into your field of fire at once, the better. Also, the side that gets its sights on the enemy first generally has the upper hand, while any type of movement under fire like this break contact, for example, requires tighter cohesion to prevent reflex-driven friendly fire. John Wick, probably. In this firefight, the Ukrainians emerged victorious and, despite initial difficulties, managed to kill several Russian soldiers with small arms fire. Even without the fog, the fighting around Pokrovsk and other parts of the front on the tactical level has been characterized by small skirmishes, ambushes, deception, and extreme close-quarters combat, as I will now illustrate using several examples. The first example is this one, where a single Ukrainian soldier tricked two Russian soldiers into believing he was one of them. Completely unaware, they closed in on him, fully convinced they had encountered a friendly soldier. Apparently, the Ukrainian exploited the fact that many poorly equipped Russian troops lack radios and have no precise awareness of the presence or strength of other friendly forces in the area. So he removed all chevrons and insignia to trick them into believing this was a random encounter with a friendly, then he opened fire on them from point-blank range. There is a 9-minute interview with the soldier explaining this event in detail, but since we still have a lot of footage to go through, I included it in the Telegram version with all scenes unblurred. Here, a Ukrainian soldier also lured two Russians into his field of fire in front of a house by pretending to be friendly, and then shot both of them. As you can see, there has been a lot of footage of these extreme close-range engagements over recent weeks and months, which is very much a result of Russia's infiltration tactics and the overall porous nature of the front. One of the most seemingly random of these close-quarters encounters is this drone video showing a Ukrainian soldier ambushing a lone Russian walking along a road. Suddenly, the Ukrainian appears right next to him with his rifle already aimed and opens fire. So far, the war in Ukraine has produced a lot of strange video material, but this one really takes it to another level. A Russian soldier appears to try to protect his head with a metal pot from a Ukrainian drone, which does not take long to arrive. He briefly takes it off again, and it almost looks as if he discusses the idea with his comrade for a moment before putting the bucket back on. How this ended is something I obviously can't show here on YouTube, but I think you can imagine the outcome. I don't know whether he truly believed it would protect him, or whether he was simply trying to keep his head from being, well, you know what I mean. The Ukrainians at times also faced such severe difficulties moving troops into the city that, after the Russians had brought almost the entire city under their control, two UH-60 helicopters inserted two special forces squads into the northwestern part of the city in a highly risky hot drop under fire to temporarily stabilize the sector at a local tactical level. The exact reason for the insertion remains unclear, but since no extraction followed, it appears they were deployed as a kind of quick reaction force to stabilize the situation and provide local relief. The Russians claimed to have thwarted the air assault using FPV drones, but there was insufficient footage to substantiate this. Nevertheless, it was clearly a risky move by the Ukrainians, and it borders on a miracle that they did not lose any of the helicopters. At one point, idle Russian FPV drones even captured footage of them approaching. As for the soldiers who were dropped off, I'm fairly certain they were targeted by FPV drones almost immediately. However, if they managed to reach hard cover quickly after touching down, there is a chance they were able to dig in and hold their positions. The deep state map still does not show the northern part of the city as being fully under Russian control, but more on that later. For now, this footage here gives us a look at what it is like for soldiers operating inside an FPV kill zone while being the target. To do the situation justice, I'll keep my mouth shut for a few minutes now and show it to you in the old, raw WarLeaks style.
FPV въебало. Ебать.
As you can see and hear, this combination of the buzzing and impact of drones, together with the thunder of artillery, can be described as overwhelming at the very least. The constant influx of FPV drones and the sheer volume of ground-based fires directed at this sector are genuinely frightening, and the men who thankfully managed to make it out of this situation deserve real respect. The sheer quantity of FPV drones being thrown into the fight by both sides becomes especially apparent when looking at the remnants of fiber optic drones which, it should be noted, represent only a portion of the total number of drones employed. Here we can see how the thin fiber optic cables stretch across entire stretches of terrain, draping the landscape like spider webs. And this, mind you, is only one section of the front. There are countless other areas that already look the same. I think this illustrates just how unsustainable these one-way FPV kamikaze systems are, despite all the advantages and cost benefits they offer. These cables also cause soldiers to repeatedly get entangled in them, sometimes restricting their mobility to such an extent that they effectively become even easier targets for additional FPV drones. And what can happen to soldiers can also happen to animals. This also raises the question of how the use of these cables affects the environment, for example, when they are deployed over bodies of water. While this type of FPV drone is resistant to electronic warfare measures, it can still be neutralized by simply cutting the fiber optic cable used to control it, as demonstrated here by a Ukrainian civilian who had a close encounter with one of these drones. We can see how he grabs the drone mid-action and, after slamming it onto the ground, pulls out its fiber optic cable spool. Once the cable is damaged or torn out, the drone is rendered combat ineffective for the moment. However, the explosives attached to it can still pose a serious risk. Even neutralized FPV drones therefore remain dangerous objects on the battlefield, requiring extreme caution when approached or handled.
Bro, fiber optic cable. Get the everywhere. Fucking things are everywhere.
Some drone operators have even started intercepting these systems by cutting the cables with the rotors of their own drones, as shown here. However, as mentioned, the cables remain behind and continue to pollute the environment. The most common kinetic method of intercepting these drones aside from ground-to-air fire remains the use of so-called interceptor drones. These have now become so prevalent in the battle space that they sometimes even compete with one another for the same targets. Enabled by AI-assisted systems, they can be among the most cost-effective and efficient methods of countering the threat posed by UAVs and loitering munitions, and the defense industry is well aware of this. And even though these were not the systems shown in the clips here, I was still able to take a look at comparable interceptor drones at the Dubai Air Show. Among them were the Vortex E and the Alagi interceptor drones. The Alagi interceptor is designed to counter a broad spectrum of drone threats, ranging from reconnaissance platforms to larger unmanned aerial vehicles. It is equipped with a 1.7 kilogram warhead and is capable of reaching speeds in excess of 250 kilometers per hour. Operationally, it can engage targets at distances of up to 15 kilometers and at altitudes of up to 3,000 meters. The Vortex E can operate fully autonomously as well as in manual mode. Its onboard camera uses AI to identify targets, and it carries a warhead weighing between 1 and 2 kilograms. Additionally, it has an operational range of up to 24 kilometers and can reach a maximum speed of 350 kilometers per hour. If you've made it this far, I really want to thank you. As mentioned earlier, I got sick, and once I was back on my feet, I had to sift through what felt like 10,000 Telegram posts filled with videos and images just to gather new material for you. This video is already quite long, and at least 1 or 2 more videos of similar lengths should follow soon. In all likelihood, I'll also be working through the Christmas holidays, which my girlfriend probably won't be too happy about, but it's necessary to deal with the huge backlog of footage. If you appreciate the effort and want to show some support, you'd be doing me a tremendous favor by giving this video a like for the YouTube algorithm and leaving a comment. I'm especially interested in hearing from active or former service members among you your thoughts on my assessment of what we're seeing in these videos, and what your role was or is when you served. But everyone else is very welcome to share their thoughts as well. Thank you so much in advance. So, what does the overall situation in the Pokrovsk sector look like? The answer I would give rather casually is contradictory, but with a clear trend. On its side, Russia continues to advance steadily and has already claimed full control over the city, a claim that is, however, denied by the Ukrainians. A look at the current map provides more insight into the situation. The map from November up to the current date, December 20, shows a clear trend in Russia's favor. Russian forces have been able to steadily expand their foothold in the area and now control large parts of Pokrovsk. The northern section is still marked as contested, and while pro-Russian commentators interpret this as the area already effectively belonging to Russia, I would disagree. Given that this is urban terrain, there is a high likelihood that Ukrainian forces still maintain a presence there. That does not change the fact that the situation for the Ukrainians here is extremely difficult, and the town of Mirage is now facing the threat of encirclement. In the short or long term, it is likely that the area will fall to the Russians. The question is simply when. This, in turn, will depend heavily on how strong the Ukrainian will is to hold the area, and how willing they are to absorb further losses, or even risk encirclement. After a long time, I once again came across a somewhat usable Russian helmet cam video that wasn't filmed in 240p. However, compared to the other helmet cam footage I've already shown in this video, it appears rather unspectacular. And I'm really not saying this to talk these men down, it simply seems that the Russian leadership is more willing to release tamer footage for public consumption, rather than intense videos showing their soldiers struggling in extreme situations. After all, they continue to push the narrative of a special military operation and want to portray this war as a walk in the park for their soldiers, even though that is clearly not the case. In the video, it appears that they were clearing a larger building held by a small element of Ukrainian forces. The reason why all types of large, solid buildings have essentially become magnets for infantry in this war was already discussed at the beginning of the video, and if you've watched it all the way through, you should now have a clear understanding of why. They combine concealment, hard cover, and depth, making them ideal locations to hide, rest, store equipment, or consolidate forces. Because of the protection they provide, factories and other solid structures effectively become rocks in the surf or anchoring points for local operations. They also allow defenders to tie down enemy forces, who, as seen here, are often forced to clear them manually, room by room. This Ukrainian fighter from the Azov brigade spotted a Russian drone operating in his area of operations and decided to engage it. With a single, skillful shot, he hit the drone, which then exploded mid-air. This Russian soldier did the same to a Ukrainian drone, only with a lot more shots. It should be noted that his rifle was equipped with standard iron sights only. Here we see a soldier after an operation at the front. As you can see, he is covered in mud from head to toe. Mud is an often overlooked enemy that affects and torments both sides in this conflict. In Ukraine, mud has historically played a decisive role in warfare, most famously during the Rasputitsa, the seasonal mud periods in spring and autumn caused by snow melt and heavy rain. During these times, roads turn into deep sludge, vehicles get stuck, logistics slow to a crawl, and even tracked armor struggles. For infantry, constant exposure to mud means soaked clothing, cold, infections, trench foot, damaged weapons, and extreme exhaustion. But even larger formations can become stuck and immobilized in mud and waterlogged depressions, turning them into easy targets for drones and artillery. Once immobilized, these units lose their ability to maneuver, disperse, or seek cover, making them highly vulnerable to sustained fires and aerial observation. This helmet cam footage shows Ukrainian rangers in a buggy as they narrowly avoid being hit by a Russian fiber optic guided drone. Luckily unharmed, the soldiers jump out of their vehicle, and both on the ground and later wrapped around the barrel of the cameraman's rifle, additional strands of fiber optic cable can be seen. It almost seems as if these strands are even more omnipresent than the drones themselves. And now my cats have something very important to tell you.